For decades, Western leaders maintained a near-universal consensus on military action in the Middle East. But when recent conflicts escalated, that rigid institutional stance collided with a fiery, highly visible global backlash, spilling from the streets into burning campus encampments. There is an old political rule that foreign policy issues do not decide domestic elections. Voters, the logic goes, care about their own wallets and neighborhoods, not wars fought an ocean away. This chart shows the stark generational divide that broke that rule. When asked if they approve of the military action in Gaza, 63% of older Americans said yes. But look at the 18 to 34 demographic. Approval drops to just 30%. That 33-point gap highlights a severe demographic reality. We have an aging political class trying to legislate for a highly connected, fiercely diverse younger electorate that views global human rights as a core domestic issue. By treating this massive demographic rift as a temporary public relations problem, political leaders accidentally ignited a dual-front rebellion that has deeply divided Western democracies. The first front opened at the ballot box. In the United States, voters formed the Uncommitted movement, an organized campaign to cast protest ballots to signal their opposition. That choice depressed voter turnout among key demographics, contributing to the Democrats losing the 2024 presidential race. Across the Atlantic, the fallout was equally destructive. When the U.S. initiated bombing strikes on Iran, the traditionally unified front of British politics shattered. The conservatives followed the U.S. line. The Liberal Democrats demanded strict non-involvement. And the Labour leadership, led by Keir Starmer, found itself caught cautiously in the middle, offering only limited defensive support. That political hesitation poured fuel on existing domestic friction. Across the UK, the conflict spiked tension between established Jewish communities, many of whom felt targeted, and growing Muslim populations feeling intense solidarity with Palestinians. Voters quickly realized that checking a box on a ballot was not going to force their governments to change course. So that frustration left the voting booth and physically occupied the institutions themselves. The activists named it the Student Intifada, using a term for uprising to describe their campus protests. It began with an explosive tent occupation at Columbia University and rapidly evolved into a global movement. The tent encampments certainly did not stop in New York. Within weeks, highly organized barricades emerged on university lawns across the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, and Canada. Within the tents, the atmosphere grew increasingly insular. Isolated by institutional indifference and reinforced by social media feeds, protesters often replaced open dialogue with a more rigid, defiant stance against anyone on the outside. This environment generated severe peer-to-peer polarization. It created an intense us versus them dynamic, leaving students on both sides feeling deeply isolated or actively targeted by their own classmates. These sprawling barricades removed the middle ground. The political establishment was forced into a zero-sum corner. They either had to alter their foreign policy or physically crush the domestic dissent. Faced with that choice, Western governments overwhelmingly opted for punitive force over policy reform. The physical crackdown was immense. Police cleared encampments by force, resulting in more than 3,100 arrests across U.S. college campuses alone. This chart shows the next phase, financial weaponization. Federal regulators targeted universities directly, withholding $400 million in research grants and funding from Columbia University to force compliance. The state then escalated to immigration enforcement. In 2025, the government detained and deported Mahmoud Kovil, an Ivy League graduate and legal green card holder, simply for protesting the war. These extreme institutional reactions effectively redefined a foreign policy dispute as an immediate domestic civil liberties crisis. This entire conflict serves as a harsh mirror for Western democracies. It exposes the fragility of a political system that refuses to bend to the will of its voters. The establishment proved that it is willing to sacrifice electoral victories, academic freedom, and basic civil liberties, all to maintain a geopolitical consensus that has alienated its youngest and most diverse voting blocs. The physical war may be distant, but it leaves behind a generation of Western citizens who have watched their own governments prioritize geopolitical alliances over the constitutional protections of their own people.